attention to. So, again, we all know our own bodies and ourselves, and we have to pay attention to that more than ever before, because if we're paying attention to that and we are able to we're able to moderate that as time goes on, we won't get to the point of burnout. So what does burnout sound like and look like and feel like? I see that we've finally got our presentation back. So if we can maybe go to the 5th slide, that would be great. Here we go. We've got our visuals. All right, there we are. So what does burnout feel like? Physical and emotional exhaustion. It can be a feeling of being overwhelmed, stressed, a lack of energy so that you are not consistently productive. Changes in sleep patterns and appetite. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling of, I'm so tired I can't sleep, but that can be an indication of being really, really overexhausted, and that you need to, rein some things back. Your appetite can change when you are really exhausted. It can mean that you lose your appetite. It can mean that you're overeating. It can mean that you're eating in a way that's not healthy for you, that doesn't make you feel good. When you use, food or alcohol or even drugs more to feel better or to not feel well. I have a friend that once said she knew she was at a point of burning out when she looked at her bedside stand and she had 4 different prescribed medications on her bedside stand. She had Ambien, she had an anti-anxiety, she had a migraine medication. I mean, talk about indications of stress and physical burnout. So we have to pay attention to that. And the more we can do things that are really holistically good for our bodies and our minds, the less chance that we have to depend on prescription medications or having, a couple drinks that may lead to a couple more, or using food sort of as a panacea for, feeling good and feeling healthy. There's also this sort of depersonalization, sort of a cynical attitude, like, what does it matter? What's the use of this, reduced sense of personal accomplishment, feeling thoughts of, a lot of thoughts of self-doubt. And, we've been hearing a lot about depression lately in the news. It's really, particularly last week, we had, 2 well-documented suicides due to depression. And so, these are all signs that we need to kind of move ourselves on, back on track. Doesn't mean that if you have serious depression that mindfulness is going to, do the trick. There's clearly a point at which you need to go to medicine and therapy and all of that. But this is to say that if you're not in a case of serious depression and you just want to keep yourself healthy and functional and focused, think about watching signs that are leading to negative things for your mental and your physical health, and try to nip them before they get to be too significant. So the next slide, we actually can think about, Candace, can you switch to the next slide, please? Thank you. That longer and more frequent practices of mindfulness and or meditation shape the mind and change the brain. So this is the neuroscience of it all. This is not just sort of a feel-good kind of an effect, even though it does in many cases feel good. But this is about retraining the brain. So it has to do with the neuroplasticity of the brain, and that the brain is actually trainable. So the longer and the more frequently, which is why we call it a practice. It's not something that if you do it once every 6 months, you're going to really reap the benefits of. Just like exercise, just like a good diet, eating one healthy meal does not right all the wrongs of all the, McDonald's, Burger King, et cetera. So as we think about, developing a practice, the good news is at any point in your life, if you develop a practice where you are becoming more mindful or doing little bits of meditation, it actually changes the physical components of your brain in a more positive way. Now, the key here is frequency. The key is not duration. You do not need to sit down for an hour. The key is having a practice and working the practice. So if it's that every day you want to spend 10 minutes, that's excellent. 10 minutes can be just what you need to get yourself on a practice. If it's taking some deep breaths in the workplace, after a really stressful meeting, that can work. But it's developing a practice and then working the practice. So neuroplasticity explains that what we think, do, and pay attention to changes the structure and function of our brains. Or another way to put it, for you all, I hope you can relate to this, is the software can change the hardware. So MRI studies have shown changes in brain structure before and after acquiring a skill in this, that the brain actually changes. And the brain is malleable. Even in adults, we can intentionally change our brains with training. That's a very powerful notion, isn't it? A very powerful notion. We're going to give this a try. We're going to try to have a moment of real conscious clarity. And we're going to change to the next slide right now. So we're going to reset for a minute. We're going to take a pause. So everyone get comfortable in whatever chair you're sitting in. Go ahead and take a few conscious breaths. As you're taking those breaths, what I want you to do now is be fully conscious of your next 4 breaths. Breathing in and breathing out 4 times. Take a moment and do that. Really pay attention to what's happening with your breath, with your mind, what's happening to your body as you take those breaths. So check in with your body as you're taking those breaths. What is there for you? What sensations are in your body right now? What thoughts are passing through your mind? Are there thoughts passing through your mind? Are you feeling any moods or emotions? Notice your quality of being. Take 2 more deep breaths. A reset pause will reconnect us with the direct experience of the current moment through our senses, through feeling, through breathing, through sensing our emotions. It enables us to re-enter the here and now. In a reset pause, we become intimate with what's happening and experience our own body, our own mind, our own tenderness, what we're about, the essence of who we are. So by disrupting our habitual behaviors, we're open to the possibility of new and creative ways of responding to the moment. I'm just wondering if any of you feel different after taking those breaths. Maybe you were late to the webinar. It certainly helped me because we had a technology issue. This is extremely powerful. If you get off a call and the call has upset you, if you walk out of a meeting, if you are having a day that will not stop, where you're going and you're going and you're going all day long, taking a very slight reset can be a great practice in your day. Again, this does not have to be long. How long did we spend on the phone just now? Maybe 40 seconds? That can start to change the brain waves and the pattern of your brain and the way you think and the way you react. So part of mindfulness is really about ourselves. And if we can skip ahead to 2 slides, if you don't mind, Candace. Everything you need. This is part of what being, sort of meditation is about. It's about going inside yourself. It is about searching inside yourself. Everything you need is there. We often are looking to the external world for validation, for love, for strength, for compassion, for empathy. But really, when we start to develop this practice, the way you can refuel yourself is by going inside yourself and pulling that out of yourself. Now, that may sound very strange and very foreign to those of you who are new to this practice. I don't know how many of you who do some meditation have had a moment, sort of an epiphany of this is what it's about. That I did, where I was practicing and my mind was wandering and I had to constantly pull myself back. My mind felt like, I would say it felt like an intersection in the middle of rush hour all the time. And I had a really difficult time focusing on meditating and clearing my mind. One day it worked. And it was honestly, one of the most profound things that I've ever felt, because I really got inside myself and I felt such a sense of peace and calm. And at that moment, I understood what all the hype was about. And I've been practicing since. So again, when we think about stress, think about all of the negative effects that stress has on our body. Yesterday, I was reminded of Alzheimer's. There's hypertension, high blood pressure, cancer to some degree, heart disease, so many negative depression, so many negative things come with our inability to know what to do with stress in our body. So having this as a tool is a really important component of self-help and self-health. We need to find our little moments of peace as we go about our busy lives and our schedules. The next slide shows one of my favorite books on the topic. So I don't know if any of you have read this, but it's called Fully Present. So it's the science, art, and practice of mindfulness. It's a really good read. It's something that, you can pick up and put down. You don't have to read it all in one sitting. But it is something that will help you start a mindfulness practice if that's something that you're interested in doing. We are now going to move to another way that you can use, work with your emotions, and it's called the STOP practice. And what STOP stands for is stop, that's the S, take a breath, so the T, be open to your feelings, the O, and choose a way to proceed that is wise. So stop, take a breath, be open to feelings, and choose a way to proceed that is wise. One of the keys to mindfulness and emotional intelligence is being aware of your own feelings, understanding your own emotions, and being able to understand when you're starting to feel stressed, when you're starting to feel a flushness in your face, or your heart rate goes up, or you feel your jaw tenses up, and then saying to yourself, having enough of an awareness to say to yourself, something's going on, I am reacting negatively to this. I can either lash out at this person or this situation, or I can step back, I can stop, I can take a breath, I can be open to these feelings, understand what's going on with myself, and then choose a way to proceed that's wise. One of the ways to proceed might be to say, I need a minute. It may just be to take a time out and to take a walk around the office, take a walk around the block, step outside, take some deep breaths, get away from people for a few minutes, and then come back to it. But being able to stop yourself in the moment and say, this is not going to go well if I proceed, because my emotions are are flooding me right now and I'm not thinking clearly is a really powerful thing to be able to do, because then you really have the ability to completely change the face of what happens after that. So think about a situation where you've felt a negative emotion at work. So some kind of frustration or a loss, grief even. So see it in your mind's eye and go to that moment, that painful moment for just a minute. Now stop and pause and recognize that negative feeling. Recognize that you're feeling negative. Notice and allow the emotion to be there. And then sort of investigate, why am I feeling this way? What beliefs do I have around this? And then nurture yourself out of it. Don't beat yourself up for having those emotions. Be kind to yourself in the midst of it, but know that you are having an emotion that either will be positive or negative, depending on what that emotion could be. Happiness. That emotion could be sheer joy, or that emotion could be anger, frustration. So being mindful enough and self-aware enough to notice that is a big part of how you can use mindfulness and emotional intelligence and all of these good practices to better your relationship with other people, better your communication on the job, in your personal life, etc. The next slide talks about mindfulness of activities. This is where I love this because it's so practical. There are so many ways that we can be mindful. So I'll give you a few examples. You can, as you wash your hands in the morning or whenever you wash your hands, that can be a moment that triggers mindfulness. You can say, I'm going to stop right now and I am going to pay attention to the water coming over my hands, the way the soap feels, the sensation of the moment. I'm going to clear my mind. It can be while you're walking. There's something called a mindfulness walk. There's no particular way to do it. It's getting out in nature. It's having a walk, and it's being aware of everything going on around you. It can be on a bike ride. It can be a mindful moment as you're exercising, where you're clearing your mind. But what's happening here, as you'll see, is it's something that triggers you to be mindful. So it's a situation where every time I get on my elliptical, I'm going to have a few mindful moments as I start out. Or I walk my dog every day. I'm going to have some mindful moments and just be in the moment and present when I walk my dog, and looking at the trees and hearing the bird song and really being aware of what's going on around me. There is a person that I used to work with that would put red dots on things. And every time she saw a red dot, that would trigger her to sort of have a mindful moment and to just slow down, take some deep breaths, and really pay attention and be present in the moment. It can be when you drink your coffee in the morning, if you drink your coffee or you drink your tea. It can be getting up 5 minutes earlier before everyone in the house is awake and the craziness starts, and just having a moment to yourself. I was in a group that we were doing a several week-long mindfulness course, and one of the people in my small group was a young mother who had a very demanding job and a 2-year-old at home and was between 6 and 9 months pregnant when we were doing this. She was saying that she felt really lost because she had lost her mindfulness practice. Her life was crazy. There was no peace and quiet at home. Her work was so demanding. She was working long hours. And what someone on the phone suggested, and we all sort of, suggested, is find a way between work and home. Pull your car off to the side of the road if that's what you need to do, and spend a few minutes really working on clearing your head. So pull your car off to the side of the road in a safe zone, close your eyes, and have a few minutes of mindfulness and potentially of meditation. that will put you into a different mindset. Another practice that I love is some people have this moment of clarity when they leave the house in the morning. So it can be that putting your hand on the doorknob as you walk from your house to your car, or your house out, walking out the door to get a train, or as you're walking into your garage, that is a trigger for a mindful moment. So again, we want to do something that allows us to have a trigger that reminds us. So if it's when your alarm goes off in the morning, you take a few minutes, whether it's, when you're at a red light, that could be a moment. Instead of checking your phone or feeling impatient, that can be when you take a breath. It can be when you arrive somewhere. So when you arrive to work, or when you arrive to the grocery store before you walk in, or when you arrive to an exercise class, or one of any number of things, to just take a moment and breathe. One of the things that I think is so interesting is that mindfulness and emotional intelligence is being drilled down to a much younger age than it ever has before. I think that is incredibly exciting. For many of us, we've come to this later in life because our lives have gotten so stressful, and we've been looking for a release, a way to really manage the stress. There are now preschools, mindfulness preschools, that are popping up all over at least North America. And I know from some of my colleagues in Australia and New Zealand and that area, and I'm sure in Europe, and I'm sure in Asia as well. I think that's really promising when we are starting to teach folks the ability to mitigate stress and conflict and negative emotions this way. You may have heard that the Army practices mindfulness in many of their camps now. First responders, police forces, firefighters are bringing mindfulness and meditation into their units, because there is such a tie between mindfulness and meditation and emotional and physical health. So again, we're going to talk, to that end, we're going to talk a little bit about what are the positive aspects of mindfulness other than just a moment of clarity. So the first in our next slide is that mindfulness is shown to reduce rumination. And for those of you maybe who don't understand what I mean when I say reduce rumination, it's that overthinking. It's what typically will cause you to wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep because you're thinking, oh my goodness, why did I do that in a meeting today? Why did I send that email? I shouldn't have done that. I wish I could retract it. It's the overthinking of everything. Things that have happened, things that are going to happen. Sometimes we need to let things go. And that is part of this practice as well. We need to let things go. So as we are mindful and we're getting more focused, we are going to probably find that we're going to sleep better. We're not going to be overthinking things. And all of these can lead to depressive tendencies. We know that being sleep deprived leads to depressive tendencies. But also this rumination of constantly second guessing ourselves is a very unhealthy aspect of sort of human behavior that we can curb with mindfulness. The second is stress reduction. So there are many studies that if you look at, I've cited just one in 2010, but many, many studies that show that mindfulness is used in stress reduction and therapy. So again, if you ever want to, Google some of these, please feel free to do so. You can also, in that book, there's a number of studies that the book that I mentioned earlier, a number of studies that are referenced in terms of how mindfulness helps stress reduction. And we know stress reduction has an absolute correlation to our health. The third is it boosts working memory. So I was mentioning that I was at an Alzheimer's event yesterday and was hearing from the chief scientist from the Alzheimer's Association. And certainly taking moments of clarity and working on mindfulness has a direct correlation to memory support. There was a study done a while ago on taxicab drivers, not by taxicab drivers, on taxicab drivers, and they found that back before GPS, when they had to remember so many street names and intersections, they had better memory skills long term than their counterparts that worked in other professions. The fourth, and these are just 6 of many, but the fourth is that it decreases emotional reactivity. So, Candace, if we can switch to the next slide. The emotional reactivity is around, again, being able to stop yourself in the moment and saying, I can feel my emotions. I can either now respond with an emotional response, or I can take a minute and I can respond better by taking a minute, a mindful moment, if you will. The fifth is improving cognitive flexibility. This is being able to adapt better, being able to access the region of the brain that's associated with more adaptive responses. When you know and see people that can think on their feet really well, that's one of those elements that you can improve over time. And then improve relationship satisfaction. Being mindful is being mindful of yourself and your own emotions, as well as being mindful of others and their emotions. So being able to be very emotionally aware is extremely important to relationships, because not only are you paying attention to yourself, but you're paying attention to that person that you're in a relationship with. And you're reading them in a better and more profound way than you probably have in the past. So if we can move forward, Candace, to the next slide, we have 8 mindful attitudes here. I'm not going to read through them all, but I'm going to talk about a couple of them. One is not judging. So being mindful is, there's a lot of talk about mindful listening. Mindful listening is not anticipating what you think that person is going to say, judging what they're saying, running it through all your filters that you have in your brain, but it's really listening with clarity. And perhaps, talking back to them in a way that shows that you've paid attention. Asking for clarification. That's what mindful listening is about. And then responding. And again, paying attention to, your emotions and how you're feeling about it. Having a beginner's mind or a child's mind towards things is also a way to be more mindful. This comes again with taking all those lenses off and all of the clutter that surrounds and all the bias that surrounds any particular topic, and really trying to see it for what it is. And then trust, acceptance, letting go. Letting go was part of, if you will recall, part of the rumination piece. So letting go is very important when it comes to mindfulness. The next slide, we're going to, talk about emotional intelligence and what's the difference between mindfulness and emotional intelligence, or for that matter, what's the difference between meditation, mindfulness, and emotional intelligence? Meditation is a practice that builds mindfulness. So meditation has a lot of benefits. Building mindfulness is one of the benefits of meditation, including, in addition to stress reduction and many of the things we've already talked about. Mindfulness and building a mindfulness mindset increases your emotional intelligence. The good news about emotional intelligence, like all of this, is that it's never too late to start building it. We sometimes look at people and they are very, very good at dealing with others, at putting themselves in someone else's shoes, at making people feel comfortable, at reading a room. And we may think, wow, are they good at that? They were born that way. And it's true that some people are just equipped as more emotionally intelligent people than others. But the good news is you can learn the ability to be more emotionally intelligent. So the next slide talks about what does emotional intelligence mean? We're going to go through that, not that one, but the next. What does emotional intelligence mean? It's the ability to understand and manage our own emotions, as we've spoken about. So again, what am I feeling? What are my triggers? What don't I like? Does this person automatically trigger something negative in me? The next thing is, now that I know myself, recognizing, understanding, and influencing the emotion of others. And then the awareness that emotions can drive our behavior and impact people. So it's being really aware of your own emotions, looking at someone else, being aware of their emotions, and then understanding how those emotions can drive and impact people. So some of you are probably already very good at that, and some of you are probably not as good at that, but you can get better. You can absolutely get better. Single tasking. So this is a way to build mindfulness and emotional intelligence. Instead of multitasking, which we all know used to be sort of a point of pride. Oh, I can do 25 things at once. Well, I think what we've realized over time is that is not necessarily something to be proud of, because all it means is our mind is scattered. Our mind is that snow globe that has been shaken up, and we can't really focus on any one snowflake in that snow globe, right? So single tasking, trying to really have focus on one thing at a time that you're doing, really, really helps. One of those things might be eating breakfast without your cell phone. That's something that is completely within your ability to control. Maybe you wait for a while. We've all heard stories about, people that go to their cell phones first or their emails first. Their whole day can be sort of uprooted, right? Don't you deserve a few moments of peacefulness and of getting into your own mind, having coffee, starting your day without being distracted by your cell phone? I think, we've all heard so much in the past couple of years about, the negative effects of this on us. So allow yourself that. Gift yourself a breakfast without your cell phone, or your morning coffee if you don't eat breakfast. For me, my wake-up routine is my morning coffee. I like to sit. I like to journal, which is another great way to be mindful. But that's what I like to do. I like to plan out my day. I like to be really thoughtful about my day. And that's my morning ritual. It's not to get up and look at my phone right away. I used to do that, and it really can not only waste your time, but derail your day. So whatever that morning ritual is for you, follow it. Have a morning ritual. There's a reason that Mark Zuckerberg wears a gray zipped hoodie every day. And there's a reason that Steve Jobs wore a black turtleneck all the time. It's because those are things they didn't want to waste time and energy thinking about every day. There's, some folks will say they eat this exact same breakfast every day because that's something they don't want to think about. They don't want to get up and say, oh, I have 20 things that I can pick from for breakfast. What's it going to be today? That's one way of single tasking and of creating focus and of simplifying your life, is saying, this is what I eat at least Monday through Friday when I'm in my work schedule. I eat the same thing for breakfast. I have the same morning routine, and that's how I start my day, and it feels comforting and good to me. When on a train or a bus, simply sit and observe. Don't be staring down all the time. Watch a movie from start to finish without distraction. It's easier to do that in a theater, but maybe you're going to try doing that at home. Don't have all your browser windows open at the same time. And I admit that I am guilty of having too much going on my screen at any given time. Detox from technology. Can you do it one day a week? Can you do it one day a month? But really, can you spend one day without technology? Can you detox from any media, social media or otherwise? I know I have found that I was becoming absolutely consumed with the news, and I am a little bit of a news junkie, so it was very hard for me to step back, but I found it to be really, really helpful to my productivity, my focus, my ability to have a positive worldview, etc., as I started my day. The next slide is, I think typifies where maybe some of us are at. We want inner peace and we want it now. Well, it only comes with practice. And again, it doesn't have to be long. It just has to be consistent. So if I leave you with nothing else today, I want to leave you with the thought that it doesn't have to be long. It just has to be consistent. Consistency is what will win when it comes to creating these really great practices. The next slide talks about 4 very simple and effective practices. Mindful breathing. We were just talking about and practicing mindful breathing. Really, at any point in your day, stopping and slowing down and just breathing and paying attention to your breaths. This is how most people start meditation, is they start it through breathing practices because it's really hard to jump in. So mindfully breathing can really, really be helpful at any point in the day. Mindful eating. Having a little square of dark chocolate is a treat for me. When I do that, I don't shove it in my mouth and run out the door. I find that to be my little guilty pleasure that I can have at the end of a long day. And sometimes it accompanies a glass of red wine. It is really a treat to me. And when I have that little square of dark chocolate, I put it in my mouth and I savor every nuance of that chocolate, sort of the bitterness and the cocoa flavors, and sometimes the little taste of coffee that comes through it. That can be a mindful experience. Anything like that can be a mindful experience. It doesn't have to be a dark piece of dark chocolate. It could be a great piece of cheese, whatever it is that really, sets your heart aflutter. Make that a mindful moment. Obviously, yoga lends itself to mindfulness. Stretching does, Pilates, even running, anything, any form of exercise. If you can put yourself, if it's a trigger for mindfulness and you can put yourself into that space, will be helpful to you. And then there's a body scan meditation. This is something that you can look up after the webinar. But essentially what it is I find it's very, very helpful in helping me calm down before I go to sleep at night, or putting me back to sleep if I happen to wake up. But it's a meditation that actually starts from sort of the tip of your head, where you're feeling, your hair and the hair follicles and your scalp and your skull, and it goes all the way down, and you work your way down through your body. And as you're working your way down through your body, you are acknowledging every part of your body. You're acknowledging your muscles and your bones, and going all the way down through your toes. As you work your way through your body, and as you get practiced at this, it's something that will calm your physical being down. And like I said, when I have those moments where I wake up and I'm having trouble falling back asleep, in fact, I have trouble doing a body scan without falling asleep, it really calms my body. So that's something that, again, if you want to, look it up or do a little more research on it, but it's a very simple practice. It's nothing that's complicated, but it's something that acknowledges every essence of your physical being. And as you're working through, you're sort of relaxing every element of it, your jaw, your abdomen. You're working your entire way down the body. So, again, how to use this in your life? There are so many ways. You can either use a guided meditation. There are many, many, many out there. I did a whole series by Deepak Chopra and Oprah that I thought was really helpful. I did that a couple of years ago. There are really good apps that have come out. Candace and I were talking before this went live about an app called Headspace. And I know a number of people on the last webinar I did today would also use Headspace. There's another one called Calm that's very good. I use one called Mind Body. It has a lot of different options, and in some of them you can pick a 2-minute guided meditation. You can pick a 20-minute guided meditation, but it's someone leading you through the practice, and that's a good way to start if you don't really know how to get yourself into a meditative state. There's also self-meditation. So you can absolutely try this. This is something that you probably, want to do a little bit of preparation for. Either take a class or take a webinar or, do an app for a few times and then start to self-meditate. People that are very skilled at this can pull themselves into a meditative state so quickly because they are, again, so practiced at it. That is how you get better at meditation, is practicing and practicing and practicing. So the next slide talks about self-care ideas. These are all really good ways, again, to practice mindfulness. Giving yourself the luxury of curling up and reading a book and really paying attention to the beautiful prose and the words on the page, and whether you're reading it on a Kindle or have a physical book in your hand. Going for a walk. Don't waste your walks. Get inside your head. I find that this is a really good time to do some thinking. If we are constantly going and going and going and never getting inside our own heads, we're losing ourselves. We're losing what's unique and different and interesting and valuable about ourselves and our own minds. So allow yourself time alone to go for a walk. You may walk with a buddy too, which I think is a great practice, and it tends to help you become more regular with any kind of a walking practice. But spend some time alone, whether it's walking or timing your car on your way to work or whatever it may be. Connecting with a friend. We've all seen that social interaction is a key to a life of greater happiness. It's even for introverts. They're saying that social interaction is really important, and it's important for our health and wellness and longevity of life. And you can do mindfulness, and you can do all of these things with a friend as well. Writing in a journal is something. If you ever take any kind of a more in-depth mindfulness course, writing in a journal is a big piece of this. Lighting a candle. Lighting a candle can be the trigger for you to have a mindful moment. Next slide. So again, these are all benefits of mindfulness. Really important that you look at this list and think about all these ways that you can really improve any one of these by doing a little bit of meditation. That again helps build mindfulness, that helps build emotional intelligence. Next slide. This isn't, we're going to skip that one. This is another one of my favorite books, and this is by Daniel Goleman. He is in some cases considered sort of the father of the mindfulness movement and the emotional intelligence movement. This is a great read, great writing, easy to read, easy to consume. Again, something that you can pick up and put down. But I think if you're interested in emotional intelligence, will really illuminate for you how important it is in the workplace and in personal life, and all the benefits that it can bring to certainly your career and your ability to be a good leader. So mindfulness practices that we talked about, I just want to leave with you. Mindfulness of breath, three breath practice we talked about, how just 3 simple breaths can make a difference. A minute to arrive, which was whenever you arrive somewhere, using that as a trigger to just spend a minute taking deep breaths and calming yourself. The stop method that we talked about, and mindful walking. With that, I would love to take any questions in the last few minutes that you have, and I I really do hope this is helpful to you. I'm happy to chat with any of you offline, since we're running out of time, about any additional resources, and hope that you seek some out. And I would love to hear from you if you do develop a mindfulness practice, if this helps you in any way, if you're noticing a difference in your life. Ben, any questions from the audience?
Let's see. We've got one that is this PowerPoint available to download?
It
Then we'll be able to
can be. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Deborah. I was just going to say we can send that out to all of the attendees today. So yes.
Great.
All right, great. Any more questions? I'm not really seeing any.
Okay.
Will there be a recording of this? Yes, I can answer that one. There will be a recording, and then we should have a link on the website.
And Deborah, someone did say earlier, I just want to jump in really quick, trying mindfulness at work. It's hard to find time away from your desk, let alone, breaks and things like that. What would you say to this person asking that question?
I would say start in very short increments. I had many years ago a job that was unbelievably stressful. And what I would do is I would sometimes schedule time. I'd put on my calendar that I had a meeting, and I'd give myself 15 minutes of protected time where I literally decompressed. It was long before there was a word for it in my world. I used it to decompress, but I think those could be your mindful moments. It can be 2 minutes. Again, it can be 3 mindful breaths. So it's not about, scheduling an hour in your day, in your work day. It's about finding ways to insert small moments of mindfulness and building on that and realizing and sort of paying attention to how that makes you feel. So again, it's consistency. It's not quantity.
All right. We had a question about the iOS breathing app. Have you seen that or heard of that? Basically, they were wondering if you could recommend it.
I am not familiar with it, but I would imagine it. It's probably good. I think it's almost hard to do this incorrectly. It's not like if you take 4 breaths instead of 3, you're going to have a problem. So I think anything that speaks to you, that gets you started and feels like it's moving you into a good practice of doing this is fantastic. So, unlike a lot of other things where you can go wrong, you can go down the wrong path, this is a practice that, it is as simple as breathing in some respects, and can, of course, you can build on that, so you can go deeper and deeper into yourself. But I would not overanalyze, spend a lot of time overanalyzing which is the best app. I would try a number of different things, see what resonates with you, see what feels right to you, because the important thing, remember, is that you do it. So whatever you like and feels best to you is probably something you're going to continue to do.
All right. There's another request for the link. If you go to vmug.com and then click on Learn and Webcasts, at the very bottom there'll be a live webcast. Click here for an on-demand webcast, and it'll have a list of all 3 parts of the series. Then looks like the last question we have. Oh, we got a couple more. The notion that everything you need is already inside yourself justifies some really bad management and executive practice. How do you counter that?
I would say that for most people that are not good leaders, they probably are not very self-aware individuals. So this isn't about going and unleashing, the bad within ourselves, right? This isn't about going and unleashing, all the negativity we have. This is about finding peace, happiness, love, confidence within ourselves. So, there's a lot of business books now that even write about some of the most successful CEOs, successful not necessarily by monetary standards, but by the way they lead their teams and the way they connect with people, are those that practice meditation and mindfulness. So I think that, again, this is the end to this. To what end are we doing this? And it's to bring out the good within ourselves, to bring out the peace, the peacefulness, the love, the compassion that we have. It's not to bring out resentment and those kinds of things. So it doesn't mean that you don't learn externally, but what it means is, your inspiration and your fuel, the fuel for the good that you have is already there. It's a matter of tapping into it. And I think that people that are probably not good leaders are not tapping into it. They're not even, in many cases, they're not even looking at themselves at all. So I think that's where kind of the rubber hits the road, is really knowing yourself and tapping into the good that exists within all of us. I hope that was at least a little helpful.